Hello, hello, hello. Okay, I have got Adam Fritz with us today. I told someone before this call, I said, "Oh my God, I actually worked out and now I look like I've been and feel like I've been hit by a Mack truck." And they were like, "Oh, but you've got Adam tonight. He's the nicest guy on earth." And everyone says that. And I have to, full disclosure, before we talk, you know, do all the grown-up stuff. Um, the thing I remember the most about you, and I'm going to get the details wrong, and I hope I don't embarrass myself and it was you, but I'm sure it was you. I was on an APAC, and those online APACs can become kind of overwhelming, right? And you walk away just kind of befuddled, not knowing who you talk to or what you. The one thing I remember from the entire APAC is Adam Fritz telling a story about being in some exotic place raising turtles or daffodils or dolphins or something.
Turtles.
It
Turtles.
was turtles, was
Yes.
it?
So I volunteered at the Buena Vista Sea Turtle Hatchery in Playa Samara, Costa Rica after I graduated from my undergrad for 2 months, lived on a beach, and was basically one of the volunteers that when the turtles hatched when they laid their eggs on the beach, we would patrol the beach at night and take all their eggs into the hatchery. And when they hatched, we'd take all the baby turtles and release them back out on the beach. It was basically to stop poaching and that kind of thing. So it was very, very cool.
It was the story, it was the best story I'd ever heard, ever. And I remember that was the one thing I remembered from the entire APAC was I wasn't completely clear what the animal was, but I was like, I mean, after a few years, I think it was a few
Yeah.
years ago,
Yeah, that would have been 2021. Yeah.
but how life-changing. I mean, that the feeling from having done that has to still be with you, doesn't it? Like years later.
It was amazing. It was one of those. I was 20, I guess 22, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I'd had a Bachelor of Arts that could have gone in any direction, and so I just kind of took 2 months to live on a beach and figure out what my next steps were, and I did during that time. So that was good.
Did you have like epiphanies or were you just like calm and
I
centered and
I did actually. I mean, maybe epiphany is too strong of a word, but I spent a lot of time thinking both my parents are doctors and they love their job. Like it's not work for them. It's a calling, I guess. And I don't think I really had a calling, but I spent time thinking, what do I love enough to spend my life working at it and not have it be a job? And at the time it was sports. So I did almost a decade working in pro sports and then realized to move up in that industry, you have to move from city to city. And I'm very, very set here in Vancouver, Canada. Wasn't planning on doing that. And just kind of just spent the time figuring out what career wise, not only just the industry, but what type of jobs I liked. And it involved talking to people. And so I kind of
what did
gravitated
you
towards
do
sales and
though?
operations.
I'm interrupting you,
Uh,
but what did you do
no
in pro
problem.
sports? Like specifically, what did you do?
So for my first job was selling sponsorship for a professional soccer team, for a major league soccer team in Vancouver. So when you go to a game, you see all the logos all over the field and along the signs. That was my job. Then I worked for a professional hockey team. I was the vice president of business operations. So I basically ran the business side of the organization. Our CEO and president was a former NHL hockey player who was a great leader and very, very good public speaker, but he hadn't run a business before. So I kind of ran the business side of things for him. And then I left that job and ended up in technology because it's a big booming industry in Vancouver. And I kind of fell backwards accidentally into a role with a software and manufacturing company and just loved it. And the rest is history. So.
Because you manage something. I mean, I will be the first to say I have a very bad attitude about, but that's my own personal stuff because I worked in corporate offices and I
Mhm,
shouldn't have.
mhm,
I really, really should not. If you were going to like draw a case study of a wrong career move, I should not have been in corporate business anywhere.
mhm, mhm,
Um, but the thing that bothered me about it the most is the thing that I like about Positron is I felt, and I worked in a lot of different places while I was like acting on the side, but thinking I had to pay the guy to like, do the
mhm.
job I
Yeah.
paid. I always felt there was a lack of humanity.
Mhm.
I always felt it. Even when people said there was humanity, I didn't buy it.
Yeah.
But Pozotron, from the very beginning, I felt that when, and dare we say the word, I said I would try to stay off it too much, but when the whole AI thing came out, you guys were the first ones saying, let's talk. Does anybody have any questions? Is there anything I can help? And of course, the cynical, people just want to sell you this. There's all nefarious, like literally they would have you wearing a Batman cape if they, or whatever the, sinister evil doer.
Yeah.
But you guys reached out, and you guys reached out when you did the first call with us, and not in a cheesy, I'm hiding something way. And also you provide a service that's like, to me, life-changing, because you've given me the ability. I mean, I work mostly with publishers, so I don't often have to do it, but I can't tell you how many times. Okay, so maybe you know how many times because you've received panicked emails from me, but like I'll be doing a quick audition and I don't have time to sit and I don't trust myself. I'm busy. I'm in a hurry to get the deadline in, and I need to know I don't have any mistakes. I am not going to hire an editor or a proofer for a 5-minute audition. Yes, and Kim says that it's amazing. It speeds up the process tremendously, and I trust it. It knows my voice. I know what it's going to catch. So it's a service that's a career changer for me. I don't know what I would ever do if you guys went away. I use it like a normal tool 24 hours a day.
Well, we're not going anywhere, so you don't have to worry about that.
Okay, so you can't. You're not allowed to. So, but how have you dealt with being the bad guy? Because in a lot of sectors, IT, growth is considered a scary scarcity, bringing threat. How have you dealt with that and kept your honest face on and not let the stress get to you? Because a lot of times when people try to defend themselves or explain that they don't have bad motives, they end up blocking themselves in a corner over. So tell me what your take is on it and what your experience has been.
So I'll talk about it from more like the macro level, and then I'll talk specifically about Pozotron. I learned at the last company I ran, which was in the casino gaming industry. We built electronic poker tables. It was really interesting. We did the software and hardware for it. It was a much more difficult product than we're building. And so there's lots of building hardware is much more complex than building software, because not only can things go wrong in the code when you're connecting a whole bunch of actual physical pieces of technology, a lot more can go wrong. And so as a startup,
I'm not going to get my robot anytime soon, am I?
There's lots out there. I would say, are you going to get a robotic butler from the Jetsons? No, that's probably a ways away. But I think what I learned in that job is the most important things, even if you drop the ball and something goes wrong, is you're honest and communicative with your customer about it. And you can get away, maybe get away is the wrong word, but you can get away with a lot of mistakes if your customer trusts that you're going to fix it and do everything you can to fix it. So I remember when we were launching our product on a cruise ship with one of our biggest customers, and I couldn't actually go to the deployment, the installation, because it was right around the time of the birth of my second child. But I remember I was on a call at 5 a.m. on a Sunday morning as they were trying to troubleshoot things on the ship. And I got a call from the boss of my main contact about a week later. He said, just so you know, we had really low expectations of how this was going to go. And the fact that you were on a call at 5 a.m. on a Sunday morning when your wife was a day or two away from going into labor. I didn't miss like time in the hospital or anything like that.
Yeah.
But so that just went a really long way for our trust of your company, because we knew even if something went wrong, you had the COO's attention, who would solve the problem. So I learned a lot from that experience, that the most important thing you can do is be honest. If you screw up, don't lie about it. Don't, just be super honest and communicative, and then go well over and above to solve the problem. So I believe the most important thing that we can do is offer extremely rapid, direct customer support, because for a couple of reasons. One, people deserve to get the value of what they're paying for. And if the thing they're paying for isn't doing what they need it to do, you need to fix it for them. And two, from building a business perspective, sometimes it's almost better to have something go wrong and fix it than to have nothing go wrong. Because it leads you to improve. You find out, you make sure your software doesn't do that again.
Yeah.
So you can solve the problem from ever happening again. But from a customer perspective, if you get your issue solved and you get good, quick feedback, it just increases your customer loyalty and your trust. The flip side of this is we're not building ball bearings. Our software from a technical side is quite complex. Just the concept of AI, I use the word complex and nuanced. It's a complex and nuanced subject. With understandably, many of our customers have an existential fear of AI for a couple of reasons. One, there's all this scaremongering in the media about, AI is going to turn into Skynet from Terminator. But B, I mean, I run an AI company and I don't fully understand it. So, it's a very complex subject that.
Did you see Black Mirror? I have to. Did you see the first episode of Black Mirror yet?
I have not. No.
The one with Selma Hayek.
I have not.
You've got to watch it like tonight.
Okay.
The minute you get off the phone, you'll be slightly. Yeah, you got to watch it. Okay. If anyone's out here, you got to watch that episode. Black Mirror. I would. But I have a question. So it's like right now when you call customer service anywhere. Maybe it's not that way in America, but in the UK, you get the distinct impression that they don't want to talk to you at all, ever. They want you to go to an app that's about 3 inches tall on your phone and do your big financial life-changing decisions on an app. Like nobody wants to know you. And that's the fact that you guys reach out, I think. You have the energy to be human beings. We're human beings.
Yeah.
Right? I think that would go a long way to make the fear and
for sure. I mean, to put it in context, we had an issue with the software we use for our payroll with our US employees. It's this very complex, weird edge case where our direct deposit was disabled. And I now I've almost got it resolved. I've spent 13 hours on the phone with customer support in total. With up until 12 and a half hours of time, I'd made zero progress, literally zero progress. No one had any idea. They couldn't escalate me to a manager. I was just banging my head against a wall for 12 and a half hours, basically. And as a customer, I was infuriated. I wanted to go just cancel my account, because even though I like the software, it's just such a miserable experience. So people pay us to do something, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it with a smile on our face and do it politely. And I'm also Canadian, so I'm not capable of not being polite. So
but I mean, and maybe it's because I'm an expat. I'm the one sitting screaming down the phone, customer service, and they never understand me. Literally, I'm literally eyeballs popping out, face turning blue kind of thing. But the service that you guys give, and this is kind of what I wanted to focus on. I mean, I don't want to spend an entire Joe call going, AI scary, but Pozotron isn't AI. It is, but it's a helpful AI. I don't want to, we all know that, common sense, we know that. But what I am interested in is using part of this hour to ask the questions that I haven't ever found time to delve into and ask myself. I see all these new things come up, which I haven't had time to do. I only, as I said, I use it if I'm doing an audition. I need to make sure it's perfect. If I'm doing a quick thing, that kind of thing. But you have a lot more. And I'm wondering, is there a team sitting there eating pizzas late at night, drinking beer, thinking of new ways to integrate things? And what ideas are they, and what success have you had, and what are you working on now?
That's a long question, but I've got a lot. So I can't say whether they eat pizza or drink beer, because I've actually only met about in person. We got 14 people on our team. I think I've only met 4 or 5 of them in person, because our team is actually in our development team and is actually in Ukraine and Poland. So I was supposed to go to Ukraine last May. Needless to say, I was not able to make that trip. So I'm hoping that things stabilize and the war ends at some point soon, so I can meet people. But so I can't. They are primarily young males, though. So I would say there's an element of pizza and beer involved in their life, in my experience.
Are they able
But
to work still? Are they okay, like working
yeah,
wise and everything?
yeah,
Okay,
their resilience is, I'm
amazing.
constantly amazed by it. We had about 2 months after the war started, where we told them they work as much or as little as you want. We paid full bonuses, full pay, regardless of how much work was getting done, because work wasn't important
Yeah.
with the things that were going on. And then gradually they would come back to work, part-time. Some of them just jumped right in really quickly because they needed something to take their mind off it. There was a lot of internet and power disruptions for probably about the first 6 months, so that was quite difficult. But yeah, they're all safe. They're in various cities in Ukraine, and the I've been constantly amazed with the incredible difficulties they're going through, and they just kind of handle it blasé, and not blasé in a bad way. It's just like, oh yeah, sure, there was a missile landed a block down. It's just kind of what we're living. So back to work. It's been really
So
incredible.
I'm
So
now picturing a bunch
kudos
of
to my whole
young
team.
Ukrainian guys eating pizza and drinking beer.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. We do have a couple female employees in Ukraine as well, but yes, primarily that's it. So in terms of when I joined the company, I did a kind of look at our software and our customer base with Jake Poznansky, our founder, and looked at the vast majority of our product was based on the QC and proofing side of things. We had the very start of the pronunciation guide, but really I just spent as much time as I could talking to narrators, talking to customers about what their workflow is, and finding out where those other holes in their workflow that were inefficient, or just quite frankly just took hours and hours and hours of time. And we really isolated on a couple things. The first one was the script preparation side of things. So we've added a ton of new functionality for our pronunciation guide. We've added a year and a half ago, something like that, a character guide where you can actually do character research
Now, how
in
do those
Pozotron.
work? Will you walk me through? Is it too much to go into here?
No,
Because I
not
don't
at all. Not at
literally
all.
understand any of it. I don't know
So
have a clue.
our pronunciation guide, you upload a script, you click open suggestions, and our algorithm scans your script and gives you an output of every word that our algorithm believes your average narrator may not know how to pronounce. So that's based on capitalized rare terms, so proper nouns that are uncommon and capitalized in the book. Complex words, we have a database of, in English, 150,000 words. We've paid narrators to go through line by line and grade their complexity.
Wow.
And we also use another something that linguists call trigraphs, which are three-letter combinations that would potentially create a difficult to pronounce or uncommon pronunciation in English, and then foreign words. So it gives you a scan of your script. For every word in those three categories, you decide whether you know how to pronounce each of the words on your list. And then when you add the word algorithm, for example, to your research list, it'll automatically send a call to the Oxford Dictionary or Forvo, whichever one you choose, and then send back the correct pronunciation, both in text and in audio format. It'll also allow you to, then if there's nothing found, say it's a character name, you could go type in your own information, how to correctly pronounce it, or record a pronunciation for that. And then you can share that within like a multi-narrator situation. You can both work on the same pronunciation list together, or you can send it to the author and they can fill in the correct pronunciation for character names and things like that. We also have ways
Because
where,
I'm going to interrupt you again, but
yeah, of
sorry, but
course, no problem,
good stuff
no
keeps
problem.
coming up. I keep hearing, I haven't had this, I've been so lucky with the few dual narrators I've worked with, have just been just wonderful. But
Mhm.
I hear a lot of narrators saying that they've reached out to their fellow narrator ahead of time per the publisher's request to
Mhm.
ask for, can you
Yep.
send me a sample of the voices or pronunciation of important words? And they haven't bothered to even get back to them.
Yeah.
So you're working blind, and then you look like an idiot to the publisher because the other thing they do is they then submit their stuff really early.
Yeah.
And if you're a busy person working on a schedule, you're too late, you look like you haven't done anything, and this would solve it if you're working to get, but saying that if they're not going to
Ex
get back to you, they're not going to sign up to this either.
exactly. One thing I found from talking to people was there was a lot of mistakes that could have happened by there's something called that Ryan Hicks, who used to be with us, who's now gallivanting in on a Brazilian beach somewhere. Used to love the idea of a single source of truth. And that means there's one place for an audiobook project where everyone involved knows where to find that information. So in business, it's a shared drive in Google Drive, for example. But there was a lot of places didn't have that single source of truth in an audiobook production. So the idea, one thing I had a narrator at one point early on tell me, yeah, I confirmed the correct pronunciation of the character's name with the author, and then I got 400 pickups because the author changed their mind. And so one of the ideas I had was, okay, you send your pronunciation list to the author. They say, yes, I agree. They're all correct. And then when you as the narrator get those 300 pickups back, you can be like, no, hey, Joe, here's your email where you said, yep, listen to everything in Pozotron. You're good. You're actually going to have to pay me for those pickups now. And so as a way to, get that collaboration and buy-in before you even, we treat the kind of the tagline we use for our script preparation is stop pickups before you even start recording. Get agreement on the right pronunciation, get agreement on the right character voice, for example, and then start recording. The more you can prepare in advance, the better it's going to be. The better your production is going to be. So
yeah, I'd like from even a different side of that. I am literally, and I think they think I'm completely crazy. And I 40% of the jobs don't go forward because I want that 15%. I say you have to be 100% happy when you hear the 15-minute sample. 100%. Nothing's going to be changed. Yeah. It's professionally proofed, professionally edited. If, of course, there's a mistake, of course, if, people are human, if the proofer misses something, if I miss something, but because I had the first word in the 15-minute sample was the main character's name. And then the writer approved it. I said, are you sure? Are you 100? She wanted me, after I submitted the entire book, to change all 485 instances of the character's name. And you can't, it's like, do we work well together? Because if we don't, it's not worth it for either of us.
Yeah. Did you use, have you heard of our scan occurrences feature for that exact situation?
Now, this was when I was a baby narrator, so I don't even think Pozotron was here at the time.
So what you can do, we also have a feature. You upload all of your audio in proofing, and you can type into this tool the name Daniela, for example. And Pozotron will automatically pull every occurrence of the name Daniela from the audio, and you listen to it back to back to back to back. And you can make sure they're pronounced consistently and correctly. And then you can mark all of them or some of them as pickups. So you can basically, instead of having to go Control F on your script,
because that's what I've done.
Audio file. Yeah.
I've gone into Pozotron and done Control F, which has been helpful, but you have to do it chapter by chapter.
So I will show you offline. I'll set up a quick call for you. I'll show you how scan occurrences works. It'll literally save you. I had one example where an editor reached out and said there was 30 occurrences of some random Greek god in this long 1,500-page book he was editing, and he didn't know about this tool. And I got on a quick call with him, showed him the tool, and said, you just literally saved me 15 hours because I was going to have to go through and listen to the entire audiobook and manually mark every occurrence of that word. So,
and some words you can't, there's a word, Halloween or whatever, the Irish, Samhain is how it's spelled. Yeah. But it's actually Samhain or Samhain. Right? Every single time, which was often in the book I just did, I had to look it up. Every single time, because my brain did not accept it. It just couldn't get it right. I couldn't figure out. And I do think it's a publisher book. They're going to proof it. But I think just to be extra careful, I might want to run a check.
For sure.
It saved myself some time and embarrassment, 700 pickups.
So you mentioned what's coming up next. So that's actually a good segue. We're building. So currently what you can do, you do your script prep, your pronunciation work. Our character guide gives you an output of all the character names. You can add them to a list and put a bunch of research in, actually record a sample speaking in that character's voice, if you're doing fiction, obviously. currently you can press a button, it'll export your PDF back to you with every word on your pronunciation guide highlighted in yellow, with a little comment with a comment box for with the actual phonetics that you added. Every character highlighted in blue, with every character name with the notes you added about that character. But what we're building is actually a teleprompter, where instead of that, you can mark up every line of dialogue for Sherlock Holmes in green and every line of dialogue for Watson in blue. You can, when the name Sherlock comes up, you can hover over that, click play, and listen to the sample of the character voice you've already recorded to remind yourself how you should be voicing that character. Listen to correct pronunciations. And then the next iteration of the character guide that we're building is an algorithm that will actually pull descriptive examples of how that character is referred in the book. So you can go into Hound of the Baskervilles and say, I want to know how Sherlock's voice is described in the book.
Yeah, see, that's what we do manually before we do a book. We do that, and we record. I record on my phone the word from the source so that I've got it, but that would take a lot of.
And so what this algorithm will do will actually pull every adverb linked to that character's dialogue. So it'll say, you know, deep, not just adverbs, some adjectives as well, but like things like deep baritone, aggressive, and you'll be able to scan through and pull all those cues and then create that character's voice from there. So it'll really, our goal of our script prep tools, you're still doing the same things you're doing manually. You're just doing it in a fraction of the time.
See, and that it comes down to time, doesn't it? Because I've just, for these calls, as we've amped up the amount of calls we've done, the editing, I was having to, and especially if I know the person or if I'm in a weird mood, I tend to go off on tangents and tell people too many personal details when the call's not about me. So, like I just did. So what I've learned is recently, if I say something on the call, I'll say, oh, I'm going to edit this. Then I transcribe the call, stick it onto YouTube, private, let it transcribe itself, cut and paste it into Word, do a word search for edit, and I've saved myself carefully listening to hours and hours and hours of video. You know what I mean? It's the same. That's how I think of Pozotron. The more information we have that's searchable, his voice isn't searchable without that, is it?
So this is a bit of a segue, but you mentioned my philosophy. I saw a meme a while ago. I think it was on LinkedIn. It's people who use LinkedIn just like they use Instagram are hilarious, but not its designed intent. But they put it out there saying, you will not be replaced by AI. You will be replaced by a competing person who is more efficient because they use AI. Someone who does that exact same job faster and quicker and smarter because they're using AI. Especially if you're in a creative industry, my personal take, I've been very public on this. I don't want to watch a movie written by, AI. I don't want to listen to an audiobook narrated by AI. I would much prefer to look at a piece of art by a human than, something by AI. But AI can make things so much easier. When computers were first invented, one of our developers told me this quote, computers were thought to be the death of the white collar worker. White collar workers will no longer exist and everything will be automated by computers. And that didn't happen. White collar work became infinitely faster and easier because of computers. So I think if you look at AI in the right way, it can be treated as a tool. If I'm building something, one of the things I love doing, I love building things. So I built a gigantic fence. I bought a new house and I built 200 feet of fencing. And if I did that without a power drill, it would have taken me a long time to manually screw in every screw, but I did it with a power drill. And
your kids are going to have some serious Father's Day posts on Insta and Facebook. Yeah. My dad showed up at work and he still built all this stuff from scratch. He's the best guy and he saved turtles. Your kids are going to be like, talk about having someone to look up to.
Luckily, they're 5 and 7, so I've got a long time when I'm still their hero until they start seeing me as the flawed human being that I am, that we all are. But luckily, I got some time there. But my point was basically AI is just a tool. Just
Yeah.
like a power drill helped me build a fence faster, AI can make you do things faster. And basically, you can focus. My take is that Positron allows you to focus on the human elements of storytelling that I don't believe AI will ever be able to fully replicate. But not spend your time doing Control F on a manuscript because you have to change the pronunciation of 300 character names.
But
Um,
Positron isn't booking my audiobook jobs. Positron isn't auditioning for my jobs, and
exactly.
Positron isn't out trying to get my work. So I've got like, I love Positron. Um, but the thing, oh, Kim says, who's more of a pain in the ass, narrators or those in the gambling world?
So neither. So first, I will never say anything bad about narrators. It's a wonderful community. No, the worst is, so you mentioned, I forgot my go-to story when you asked, how do you feel about being the enemy or something like that, or the bad guy? No
Yeah.
one,
And
I'm
I wasn't
Canadian.
saying you are, obviously.
Trust me, trust me. I know. No one will ever say anything as bad to me in this job as when I ran a hockey team, a professional hockey team in Canada, and what some of the fans said when the team didn't win. So no one will ever hurt my feelings in this. I've got pretty thick skin, but no one will ever say anything to me in this job that equals what they said to me in that job. So I'm not too worried about it.
I have to interject this though. I've learned a big lesson about social media, and we all know this but I don't think we believe it. That the I was gonna take on a book because I really, really like the writer, and for complicated reasons, other people won't want to do this book. But
Mhm.
I was a bit worried about taking this book on. I might edit this part out just in case, note to self. But I was worried about what they would say. And then I'm like, who is they? Who is the they that I'm worried about? And I saw you show up at all the APA socials, at every webinar. You put yourself forward. I mean, even in the beginning, you said, if anyone has questions, I was like, I don't want to talk about AI. I don't want to be part of that conversation. But you just kept showing up. And at first, I won't lie, people, not you personally, but people, Positron, you know that they're AI, you got
Mhm.
they
Yeah,
disapproved,
yeah.
but you wore them down
Mhm.
because
Kill them with kindness. You catch more flies with
you're
honey.
Adam,
Mhm.
because you're just Adam. Now they kind of begrudgingly think of you as one of them, even though, you know what I mean?
Yeah. The
Because the human
the
being showed up.
the speech, I don't know if you guys saw it you collectively saw it at APAC 20, it's the virtual one, so 2020, I guess it was 2022, probably. And when I spoke with two other AI companies, and it was kind of a roundtable thing, and I was just very open and honest about my feelings towards AI and what we were doing, what we weren't doing. And
People liked you.
that was a noticeable turning point. I spent a lot of time trying to get in public as possible to talk about AI and what we were doing, but that was a noticeable turning point for people actually getting what we're trying to do as a company and not thinking well, I hear what they're saying, but they're clearly doing something else.
Yeah.
It's too
But
bad that wasn't in person because I would have had a lot of drinks bought for me that weekend. It's too bad.
yeah, that because you showed up as a genuine human being. You've kept and you've relentlessly showed up as a genuine, because it can't be easy. It's showing up as yourself isn't easy. It gets tiring. If you're bogged down and something goes wrong, showing up as yourself isn't the funnest route to take, you know.
I won't lie. I've had a few challenging meetings over the years, but for the most part, it's been a very good experience because, with very few exceptions, even narrators who I've convinced, who I know hated Positron at the time, I've convinced to get on a call with me, have at least been willing to listen and hear my side of it. And whether I convinced them or changed their mind or not, they at least came away with it as, hey, Adam let me yell at him for 10 minutes. And I listened and I refuted the incorrect assertions they had. But for the most part, like, there's just value in letting people vent and express their frustrations or their concerns. And in some cases, we've actually changed our terms of service to make sure that people are more comfortable with what we're doing and how we're doing it. So I think I personally prefer actually getting negative feedback. It's great when people say Positron's so wonderful, it helps me, but when someone says, "Hey, actually, this project was a disaster, and here's why," it allows us to get better. And as long as people are, being at least remotely kind about it, or not necessarily kind, but not personally attacking us, it actually just gives us an opportunity to be better.
But
So
that's the
feels
thing. If I wasn't happy and it didn't help me, I'm a busy person. I wouldn't use it. It's not
Mhm,
taking my job from me. So
mhm.
if it's not a helpful tool, I won't use it.
Yeah,
Kim says, and we have something here we always talk about, Mr. Rogers, find a helper. Adam is one of the helpers. And you are, and that's the thing, you are. And I also think, and I've got a lot of time for Ryan. I find
yeah.
him amazing. And I think that not just showing up and communicating the human interaction,
Mm,
but I think it's also comes through in the product. Do you
for
know,
sure.
it's a product that helps.
Mhm. It also, I think we're very open to taking user feedback and making changes to our tool based on that. As a total aside, Danielle, I don't know if you've met Johnny yet, who replaced Ryan, but you would absolutely. Johnny's got that same vibe as Ryan in terms of just a really pleasant, nice person who
I shall
is
have
is
to
is
meet
easy to
Johnny.
talk to. Yeah,
I think
Johnny's
he
a very
answered
very
one of
nice
my
person.
frantic last minute. I've got this audition. I think it was the writer that made a couple
Yeah,
of revisions, and I had to see because I had a feeling it was like not a couple.
yeah.
So yeah.
Um, I can't remember where I was going. I lost my train of
Sorry,
thought.
I just Johnny,
Oh, something about the helpers.
you're one of the help,
Yeah,
Mr. Rogers.
doing our best. Yes.
Okay, so let's get to the nitty-gritty stuff. Guys, don't forget, you don't have to ask just quirky questions. If you do have a question about Positron this time, I shall I shall allow, and also I'd be interested if people have any weird things with the chat box, because Zoom, talking interesting AI things, now comes up with an error message every time I set a meeting up about chat. I have no idea why. But so anything that simplifies. So do you, as an IT person, being in charge of all this stuff, do you find yourself overwhelmed with email providers that change everything at the last minute, IT stuff that changes for the better and completely screws you up? Do you find that easy for you to understand, or do you also want to bang your head against the wall?
I'm a very technically savvy person, but what really drives me nuts is when companies make massive UI changes. So UI is like user interface. When they completely redesign their website or their tool, and especially something I'm using at high volume, using a lot. Um, if I don't know where the button's going to be found, I have to spend a couple minutes trying to figure out it drives me absolutely nuts. I'm a believer in, especially from a UI perspective, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The constant redesigning of the Apple operating system. I use
Why
Apple
do they
iPhones.
do
I'm not.
that?
Um,
Why do they
my,
ruin everything that's good?
because I think. Well, I mean, I think a lot of it is in some industries, like trying to sell cell phones. You're just trying to get people to buy the new thing every time, right? And the more you change it, the way cell phones work is they continually change the operating system to the point where your old version of the hardware no longer can cope with it. And so you have to go buy a new one. I've got an Apple iPhone 10. It needs replacement so badly, but I just can't bring myself to spend the whatever $1,500 it's going to cost me. But my phone is so slow. The battery, I was on a trip with my dad for his birthday last week. At the US Open. We're both huge golfers, and I had to carry around a battery pack because my phone kept dying so often. Yeah, it drives me, the constant change in IT. While I can deal with it, does kind of drive me nuts. So that's why when you look at Positron, the UI hasn't really changed much in 2 and a bit years. Overwhelmingly, yes, we've added new features, but we're not completely redesigning everything because it works. So
What do
why
you know
change it?
now that you didn't know in the beginning? Like from all the feedback and all the changes. what do you know now that you didn't know in the beginning?
Hmm. Um, that every single audiobook, even two audiobooks narrated by the same narrator, edited by the same editor, no two audiobooks are produced the same way. And so I'm a big believer in Swiss Army knife development, which means our tool can do whatever is needed for your workflow and you don't have to change your workflow materially. I'd say that's one of the biggest takeaways I've taken over. I would actually argue maybe no one in the industry has talked to more individual narrators than me over the course of 2 and a bit years, because I've just, from a customer perspective, talked to so many, and no two narrators have the same workflow. No two editors have the same
Yeah.
workflow.
And
And I think
it's
that's the biggest thing I took away.
workflow and production. And what you just said is really interesting. It made me realize a big part of my personality is Excel. I put everything on a spreadsheet. That's how I see things in my mind. It's on a spreadsheet. It's not in my head. And
Birds of a feather. I love Microsoft
like
Excel.
Excel, I mean, I couldn't live with that. I do get like really upset if I'm like away from my schedule, my spreadsheet, but it makes me really, really good at organizing things. Like I can set up videos and get a million people's input, and I just set up a spreadsheet and I know what I'm doing. I know to the minute what I'm narrating. But if too many anomalies occur, I start to get frustrated. And I can see that being the same with kind of IT or setting up a program. You want it perfect so it catches everything, like Pozotron. But then the minute it catches everything, somebody's going to come up with something different that it doesn't cover. And that's where I go completely crazy because I lose control because I can't control
I,
it all.
I think it's a technology is a blessing and a curse in that it's never actually finished, but it
Yeah.
also means it's always going to get better. So you're never at the point where you're going to perfect it, where it's going to be completely done. It's just you have to keep working at it. But it also means whenever you find something wrong, it's not all that difficult to improve it. So it's a blessing and a curse that way, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I might need to put a flexibility chip in my software because that's not there. I'm shooting for perfect and I've never gotten it.
That's fair. That's fair.
So, what about you in real life? Are you, because you're a conundrum. I mean,
Am I? Okay.
yeah, you're like, I can see how you come across as very, very grown up and professional if you have two parents that were doctors,
Mhm.
right? Because of course, then you're raised to grown up. Doctors are
Mhm.
very serious human beings, deal with life and
Mhm.
death and all that. But then you go and you're an English major and you're saving turtles.
Yeah.
And my phone is ringing. That's embarrassing. You're an English major saving turtles. And okay, well, that's embarrassing. You know, I will edit this part out. You know, the Back to the Future alarm clock.
Yeah.
I recently set my alarm clock as the Back to the
Okay.
Future in a hope that it would
Yeah.
jar me awake. And for some reason, it randomly went off. So I will edit that out. So what I was saying was your parents were very, I get the
Mhm.
impression they're doctors. And then you
Yeah.
do an English major and you save turtles. Then
Mhm.
you go off and like you're in sports and hockey, but you're still in the business world and you're
Mhm.
in the IT world. But then you've got this creative bent where you're building things. So, what do you consider yourself as a human being navigating this world?
So I'm actually a robot. I am actually made from AI, so I'm not a real person. So one correction, I was history and psychology major. I was a Bachelor of Arts.
Okay.
So I did an MBA in business. So your question was, what do I consider myself as a person?
Yeah. Do you feel that you're left brain, right brain, creative, structured? You seem to bridge all worlds.
I'm a generalist. So I am good at a lot of things, but not an expert in any one or two things. So I believe in going wide but not super deep, whereas some people delve really deep on like one or two things. So one of the reasons why I'm very good at running small companies is I can wear 6 or 7 different hats pretty capably.
Yeah.
But could I go write code? Absolutely not. Could I know enough about development to talk to our developers and philosophically get through and help them solve a problem? Yes. So I am through and through a generalist in almost every aspect of my life. from a personal perspective, outside of work, I am obsessed with sports. I play golf. I'm 100. My addiction is golf. I play it. Well, depending who you ask, far too much.
This might
But
be off the subject,
yeah,
and I'm genuinely trying to understand
okay.
what is it you get from golf?
Oh, three things. I have a character flaw in that I'm very competitive. Not necessarily, mostly with myself. But I used to play hockey at a very high level. I used to love playing baseball. And unfortunately, through getting old, I can no longer do those things. But golf, it is my last remaining very competitive outlet. So I play in tournaments. I'm also just playing. I'm always trying to beat my best score and that kind of thing. So
So
I'm
it's
a scratch.
chasing the win, the
Yeah,
adrenaline.
yeah. And just like constant improvement. So I'm a scratch golfer, so it means I shoot around par usually. So that's one. Number two, golf is one of two times in my life where I'm not looking at my cell phone. I'm not having to deal with work emails. I'm not having to deal with the myriad of other things
Yeah.
that are come with the interconnected society. So I just literally I'm out there hanging out with my friends and competing for 4 hours and doing something I love. And then three, it's just really fun and relaxing, and it's a social thing. I'm a member of a club here in Vancouver that I've been a member of since I was 14, so it's a community
Wow.
that I've been part of for 25 years. So yeah, those are kind of the three things I get out of it: competitiveness. um I guess zen is probably the wrong word, but it's just I'm focused on solely one thing for four
It's
hours.
a vacation from everything. Kim says
Yes.
golf, it's hard to aim with your feet.
Golf is very difficult, which is also one of the reasons why people who are as obsessed with golf as I am love it and hate it at the same time.
You were very young then. How were you introduced to it?
My grandfather was a very top amateur golfer. So he grew up extremely poor in Washington State and Oregon, and was in the US Navy in officer training in Hawaii during World War II, and they had access to a private golf course that the Navy took over in Hawaii. And he's one of those extremely frustrating people who is super athletic and just picks up a sport and is immediately good at it. So he became just absolutely hooked on the game. And so my dad played it, my uncles played it, and I was introduced. I started playing golf when I was about 3. And so it's kind of the family sport.
That
And then
brings
now
it
my
to
kids
another
are both
level
playing.
though, because that
Yeah,
that encompasses it. That brings it all into wrapped up in identity and I mean,
yeah,
that's why I like to cook because it's like I'm honoring my father. You know what I mean?
yeah,
That's a big, that's like a heart-centered,
for sure. Yeah,
not just a hobby. That's,
yeah. I huge, amazing memories of playing golf with my dad, playing golf with my grandpa. I mean, last week, my dad turned 70 in 2020, and I was supposed to take him for his 70th birthday to one of the 4 major championships. Needless to say, there wasn't a lot of travel happening in 2020. So I took him to LA last week for the US Open, and it was just a great bonding experience, and also just super fun to see the best golfers in the world who do it a lot better than I do. So
Well, I think that's like the thing that, that thing that everyone chases, life balance. It seems
yeah.
like the whole generalist thing works out
Mhm.
on that front for you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
No. Sometimes I wish I had a specialist brain, but I do not. I was a pretty good student. My friend and I, we were best man at each other's weddings. We both described each other in our speeches as either the dumbest smart person you'll ever meet or the smartest idiot you'll ever meet. Um, and sometimes I'm jealous of people who can get really deep and really focus on one thing. But in school, if I was really interested in a subject, I was one of the top in the class. If I wasn't, I just kind of loaf through and
Yeah, that was me. I
get
showed
the
up and
B
put
that I
my
needed.
feet up but the way I feel about that is I don't understand specialists. I do admire them, but I mostly admire what they get for having been a specialist.
Yeah.
Like they seem to get like lots of prizes. But the thing I don't understand about specialists are what are those birds that like shiny things? Blue jays,
Um,
crows? Kim,
Aren't they magpies? Aren't they?
magpies, right? How can you not be a magpie? There's so much like glittery gold, fun, exciting stuff. And when you run into something boring, how can you
Mhm.
not? Do you know what I mean? So that's I don't think I could ever be a specialist. I wish I
No,
could.
me neither.
Too much out there to
Mhm.
experience and do. Except you probably won't be competing with me in golf anytime soon.
But so that's another great thing about golf is there's something called a handicap, which basically means if I shoot around par and someone shoots 20 over par on average, they get in we can actually compete because basically they get a stroke off their score on every hole. And so if I have a 4 and they have a 5, we tie. So that's one of the great things about golf is regardless of your skill, there's a way that you can I could go play Tiger Woods tomorrow, and we could actually have a match based on our handicaps and actually compete, which is another cool, unique thing about golf. But anyways, I'll stop. I'll
You've
stop
lost
the.
me. You lost me at 4 hours.
This is
There's
this is the narrator's cup of Joe, not the golfer's cup of Joe.
oh
So
no, we've been going off. I think about 6 months or so, we've gone way off.
perfect.
Because that's the thing about narrators, though. You're never going to
Mhm.
find more generalists in the world because
For
look
sure.
at the nature of what we do.
Yeah,
We've
for
covered every
sure.
topic ever. I'm guaranteed there's
Mhm.
someone out there that's narrated golf books. You know
There
what I
are.
mean?
I've listened to quite a few of them actually.
Yeah, yeah. Kim says, and the ladies' tease. What's a ladies' tease?
So there are different length tees based on generally, so they're actually called the forward tees now for inclusive sake. But the basically you have 4 or 5 different tee boxes, which means a hole could be 500 yards or 400 yards. Again, to give, I am 5'11" and 185 pounds. I hit the ball a lot further than my son, who is 40, I don't know, 52 inches and 70 pounds. So it's just, it's another way to equalize based on physical ability, basically.
So I've got to say, Adam, it's your respect for narrators and what we do shines through. You've
Thank you.
become like an adopted narrator, whether you want to or not.
And
You're in the
don't worry,
family.
no one is going to pay me to narrate books. My kids much prefer listening to, there's this, I've said this a bunch of times, so there's this series called The Dragon Masters that my kids are obsessed with. And I have listened to that audiobook, the series of audiobooks just on repeat. And my kids much prefer listening to the audiobook than they do listening to me read it
Do you
to
know
them.
who narrates
So
it?
her name is Emily Ellett. I got a selfie with
Oh,
her at APOC
oh,
this
we love
year. Yes.
Emily.
So
Oh, that's
yeah, she's great.
wonderful.
But my point was that though I am an honorary narrator, no one is ever going to pay me to narrate a book, so I'm not competing for jobs. So you don't need to worry about that.
I think as long as, yeah, and except still, if you do know anyone that finds those robots, ship one over here.
I will do my best.
So I'm not going to let you off the hook, though.
Okay.
I need to know if your final last words, famous last words, if you could leave the audience that's going to be watching this in the next 60 years or something
Mm-hmm.
with one thought, one thing you want them to take away from this conversation, what would that be?
I'm gonna give two if that's okay. The first
Yes,
one is going to be very specific to our industry and AI.
yes.
I've said this a few times. It is a very complex and at times existentially scary subject. The one thing narrators cannot do is bury their head in the sand or just scream about it. Educate yourself, understand what is happening, and find ways to either make it work for you or to get better at your craft to keep your lead on AI because it's not going anywhere. I likened it to someone today to having a big credit card bill. If you just say, "Oh, I'm just not going to think about it," and it doesn't get better.
You
It
got to
gets
get
much,
better
much
than the robots. You're saying you're afraid.
exactly,
You're saying a robot sounds horrible. Okay, so then it's our job to get better than the robots. And then if you're
exactly,
saying that they're gonna take over for you, you're saying that your craft isn't good enough to compete with the lowest standard cheap craft.
exactly. So I think it's the equivalent of if in 1995 you said, I hate cell phones and I'm never going to get a cell phone. I don't want them
I
to
did
exist.
that. I used to get so pissed off at people on the bus on their phone, and now I sleep with mine next to
Exactly.
my ear.
The companies that are doing generative AI, which means basically the speech synthesis, not Pozotron, they're not going to get worse. They're not going to stop. They're going to get way, way, way better. Their technology is going to keep getting better. So just educate yourself and get better at your craft. So that's the industry specific thing. But in terms of what I'd want to put on my tombstone, total, I would say communication and kindness. Those are the two most important things, is communicate with respect and be honest and direct about, what you need and what you want and what you're looking for. But also understand that everyone has a different life outlook and experience, and everyone's life experience has value and has led them to where they are. So I'm not going to agree with everyone, but I'm certainly going to listen to what they have to say. And yeah, that's what I would say. It's not as good as a guy, again, I was playing golf with yesterday. I said what he's going to be on his tombstone is, here lies Brett. He looked good. He always looked good, but did nothing well.
Your friends crack me up.
Yeah, that's not going to be on my tombstone, but
I like the old, was it Spike Lee or something? Because I had headaches for years, and it turned out to be a brain tumor. Gone, totally fine,
okay.
Totally fine. Dream resolution. But I want to put on my tombstone, I told them I had a headache. Okay, and you were right, Kim. He is a helper. So from our community to yours, to all our friends in the Ukraine, and to Ryan trotting around the globe, showing us videos of interesting grocery stores, and to you and your kindness, and showing up at the socials, and being at APAC, and just always being a helper. It just keeps coming up. Kim was spot on. We appreciate it. You're one of us.
You are most welcome, and thank you for your long-standing support of our company. It's much appreciated.
Oh, thank you. When I like something, I like it. So thank you very much, Adam. I hope you have a wonderful week. And you guys, thank you for joining. Mwah! It'll be up soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye, everyone.